Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Saturday, August 31st. This is Gina Palma. Today we will see warmer and drier conditions across the Great Basin, with thunderstorms expected to move east of the area. We will see winds increase a little bit on Sunday over parts of Idaho into Wyoming and over southern and western Nevada. However, the strongest winds will occur on Monday across Idaho and Wyoming into parts of northern and northeastern Utah. Also, thunderstorms will start returning to southern areas of the Great Basin by Monday, and this will continue to spread north as we move through the middle of next week. These thunderstorms will likely be a mix of wet and dry initially before moisture moves further north into the Great Basin. Over the last 24 hours, we did have some isolated thunderstorms over eastern Idaho, Wyoming, and in the Uinta Basin and northeast Utah. These thunderstorms were generally on the drier side, with most areas seeing less than 1/10 of an inch of precipitation, but some of these areas of thunderstorms over northeast Utah did produce over 1/4 of an inch of precipitation. Great Basin fire activity was light to moderate yesterday, with 28 new fires reported across the area. Over the last 2 weeks, we have seen very little precipitation, with the exception of associated with some thunderstorm activity, and this has been well below normal for the time of year. ERCs continue to increase again as we move through later today. However, right now they have remained below the 80th and 90th percentile across most of Utah into Idaho and Wyoming, and are on the rise again in Nevada. Looking at our current ERC charts, over the north you can see ERCs are well above normal, and across Utah they remain near or at record levels for the time of year due to how dry conditions have been. 10-hour fuel moistures, in more indicative of our fine fuels, have obviously been drying out with the warmer and drier weather we've seen, so we will see those critical fine fuel moistures return to the Great Basin over the weekend into early next week. Our satellite from this morning shows generally westerly flow and building high pressure over the southern areas of the Great Basin. Again, this will push most of that moisture off to our east, with generally sunny skies and increasing temperatures today. We will also see much drier conditions with this area of high pressure in place over the weekend. But we will see some of this deeper moisture down south start moving back up north into the Great Basin as we go into the early to mid portion of next week. Looking at our weather pattern for later today, you can see those very dry conditions in place now spreading across the Great Basin. This will take shape of very low daytime relative humidity and also poor recoveries, especially across Nevada and Utah for the next couple of nights. We have no high risk issued across the Great Basin, with moderate fire potential expected for the holiday weekend. Single-digit relative humidity will return to most areas of the southern 2/3 of the Great Basin, with relative humidity starting to drop across Idaho and Wyoming back down into the teens. Winds today will remain generally light to moderate across the area. On Sunday, this ridge of high pressure starts to build a little bit more in the Four Corners area, still with very dry air in place across the region. And we will see winds start to increase just a little bit as another trough of low pressure approaches the west coast. So winds will be a little bit breezier on Sunday across Idaho and over parts of southern and western Nevada, but we have issued no high risk as most of these winds will remain between 20 and 25 miles per hour. Again, single-digit relative humidities expand further north on Sunday with those very dry daytime relative humidities and poor overnight recoveries. You can see the wind picture on the right showing those winds starting to increase, but again, most gusts are around 25 miles per hour in many areas of the Great Basin. On Monday, that moisture starts to return to southern areas of the Great Basin, so we have issued high risk for parts of the Arizona Strip, far southern Nevada, and the southern half of Utah, as these thunderstorms again will be a mix of wet and dry. Also, as that trough of low pressure tracks further east across northern Idaho into western Montana, winds will increase further on Monday over eastern Idaho into Wyoming and across northern and northeast Utah. These wind gusts will likely be gusting above 30 or 35 miles per hour with very low relative humidity. So again, on Monday, you can see those relative humidities start to increase, especially over southern areas, and remain into the teens elsewhere across the Great Basin. And you can see how those winds increase over northern areas of the Great Basin on Monday. So again, wind gusts 30 to 35 miles per hour, again after several days of low relative humidity and poor overnight recoveries. Any precipitation we see on Monday with these thunderstorms is bound to be spotty. Although relative humidity will increase a little bit, these will be a mix of wet and dry storms initially. As we move into Tuesday, moisture remains in place over the southern areas of the Great Basin, We have not issued high risk for Tuesday, as moisture might start to increase a little bit more with at least elevated relative humidity and maybe a decrease in lightning on Tuesday over southern areas, but we will continue to watch this if we don't see that deeper moisture initially. Otherwise, very dry air in place in the north. On Wednesdays, when we see the really good northern push of moisture across all areas of the Great Basin, so we may see thunderstorms push all the way up into Idaho or at least northern Nevada and northern Utah on Wednesday. We have not issued high risk yet. Again, we're still watching the amount of moisture that returns with this. There may be some areas that have a mix of wet and dry storms, but right now exactly where that will be in the Great Basin is uncertain. However, lightning activity definitely will be increasing by the middle of next week. And on Thursday, that moisture remains in place and pushes even further north, so continued high amounts of lightning are expected on Wednesday and Thursday. However, we may start to see some of that moisture starting to reflect the fuel moistures over parts of southern and eastern Nevada and across Utah. And by Friday, some of that moisture starts to get pushed off to the east. We may see some drier air moving into western areas of the Great Basin with potential breezy winds, and also keeping that thunderstorm activity over eastern areas of the basin. Again, no high risk issued that late in the forecast, but we could have some issues with wind on the western side of the basin and still some lightning in parts of the eastern areas, depending on how the moisture shakes out. Looking at the 7-day amount of precipitation, quite a bit of a difference from the 3-day. As this moisture does work its way north, we are expecting those thunderstorms to transition to more of a wetter variety as we get towards the middle or later portion of next week. So we will be watching that, as the increase in fire potential initially next week may be fairly brief to just 1 to 3 days. But again, we are going to continue monitoring that to see how much moisture we will see in areas of the basin. Looking at the extended outlook, which takes us from September 7th through the 13th, you can see warm temperatures and still that chance for above normal precipitation as that moisture really starts to work into the basin and settle in by the middle of the month. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.